Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50 with Dallas and Michael. Today we're here to talk about whether you have a financial advisor or a portfolio manager. But before that, I want to wish you a happy birthday, Dallas.
Hey, thanks, Michael.
51 today.
That's very thoughtful of you, which I'm sort of surprised by, as the people in the audience could probably hear in my voice. But
I tell you what I'm surprised at. Every time you have a birthday, you tell me I'm 30 and then I'm 31, then I think you're 32 today. I'm surprised because you're hunched over, you're cranky beyond your years.
You're bald.
You've got no hair. You've got...
mainly the crankiness, I think, is the thing that people get sort of surprised by at my age.
Yeah, I can't believe you only... Is it 32 today?
32 today. I find myself often starting stories with, either these bloody kids these days or back in my day I did this, and you go, geez mate, you're 32, like just calm down. So no, thank you very much for the birthday wishes, Michael. I actually throw Nicola, my wife, under the bus here. That's very kind of you to remember that, because she forgot it this morning for the first half of the day, so it was good of you to remember. So.
Well, I only remembered because of our Director of Financial Doing, Kylie Hadfield, who's so good for all of our clients and so good for us as well. Yeah. I think I may have told this story before, but a couple of years ago I forgot my wife Susie's birthday, and I walked into the office this morning on Susie's birthday, and Kylie says straight away, "Oh, did you spoil Susie this morning for her birthday?" And I went, "Oh no." I've forgotten.
See, and then the continuation of that story is ever since then, Kylie now messages both you and me the day before and says, "Now don't forget, it's Nicola's birthday."
I was thinking, where were you yesterday, Kyle? When that happened. So
now she does it every year.
Yeah. So let's get to the topic. So, do you have a financial advisor or a portfolio manager or a money manager, let's say, as well?
So this was one, obviously my sort of thought, or my topic here that I came with. I had a meeting the other day with a listener actually from the podcast, and it was where this got me thinking. They'd got in touch because they'd listened to the podcast and said, we've got a financial advisor that we're actually... I'm happy with. I've got no qualms with them. Basically, just wanting a second opinion. Just wanted to check, make sure that that's all good. Now, it was an interesting one because what this person actually had is, and this is what we talked about in the meeting, was they had a portfolio. So they had, their money that was inside superannuation that was getting being managed by this advisor. And they had an investment, set up that was being managed as well. But it was the main focus of this, and I'm doing the financial advisor thing, of this money manager. The main focus was really on trying to use that money to outperform the market or to get a good return over, And this is one of those, we've talked about this before in other podcasts about, there are a lot of advisors out there that it's not that these guys are I had a quick squeeze at their website. They seem very reputable and very trustworthy, most of it. It's not that they're not it's not that they're not trying to do a good job. It's not even that they're not doing a good job. I don't actually know what their performance has been like. But the point that I was talking about with this person, this listener, g'day Darren, if you're listening, is that they're just not actually looking at the same things that I would say that a good financial advisor should be looking at, and that was, for this person in this situation, they're in a really good position. So most of our conversations were about the fact that, hey, you actually don't really need to be accumulating more. You are in a position where whatever you decide to do work-wise or lifestyle-wise, you really can afford to do that. So, what was really taking that in a different direction, that conversation, than what I think they thought it was going, which was what is actually really important to you and meaningful to you, because you sort of have the money to fund whatever you really want to fund there. And so, again, within reason, sort of all the things we talked about, we spent most of the meeting talking about what's actually important to these people. How much would it cost to fund that? What would be the funding mechanism of that? Do they have the retirement savings built up to do that? If they work for another few years, what position would that put them in? What choices would that allow them to make? Of the hour and a half meeting, it sort of went into a fair bit of the weeds there. Probably an hour and 20 minutes of that was really spent talking about what I would consider the planning aspect of it, which is, all those sorts of things. How do you fund your future cash flows as you need it? When do you actually plan to cut back on work? How would that happen? How would you phase in and out of work? Is there capacity to do that in your role? What other role would you move into? What's going to be a meaningful way for you to spend your time in retirement? What does retirement even mean for you? All these sorts of things. We spent an hour and 20 minutes talking about that, and about 10 minutes talking about, okay, well, this is how this bucket of money is invested at the moment, and does that make sense, and does that not? Or this is how your superannuation is invested, and does that make sense, or does that not? So the portfolio management side of it, or the money management side of it, took up about 10 minutes out of the hour and a half, and I think that's probably about the right ratio. It's about 10% of your time. About 10% of your time talking to a financial advisor should be spent on portfolio management, and the other 90% should be spent on the planning of your life, your future, your goals, what's meaningful for you, all that sort of thing. And so it was sort of a tricky one then, because at the end of it, the client sort of wanted to know, well, is my current advisor doing a good job? And it was sort of, it's apples and oranges, because I was going, they probably are doing a good job with, there was a couple of little things that I, in the portfolio management side of things, that I'd probably recommend they do a bit differently, but it's sort of neither here nor there, because they're spending all their time and energy with you focused on something that really should only be 10% of the whole puzzle. And it's fine if they're spending all that time on that, and they're also spending the time talking about the planning and the retirement and all the rest of it, but it tends to be one or the other. And you would have seen this with a lot of people, where you only have so much mental capacity. If you go and meet with an advisor for an hour and a half, they can't spend an hour and a half talking about portfolio management and an hour and a half talking about your planning. It has to something has to give there.
I think it can only be one or the other. and there's some very, very good fund managers, and the job of those people is to run a fund.
Yes.
And they don't want to know names or faces of the people that are investing.
You've got a good story about this, haven't you?
Yeah, so I just heard this through a podcast about financial advisors from America, and one of these, a financial advisor said that she had dinner with a fund manager, and the fund manager's job is to run the money. And the financial advisor started telling stories and said, "Oh, my brother and his family are actually in one of your funds, and you've got this situation." And he said, "Don't ever do that. Don't ever put a face
to the money,
or a name to the money." and I can understand that. So their job is just to take a pool of money, and try to attain the goal. Now, if the goal is to outperform the ASX 200, and to run a portfolio of growth-based Australian companies, or whatever their mandate is, that's the goal. They're not worried about whether it's in the right tax structure for people, whether they're people are taking advantage of all the tax deductions that they can.
They're not worried.
They're not worried about tax at all. In fact,
No.
If the ASX 200 returns 8% for the year, they will at all costs try to return 9% for the year. Even if it means it's not in the best tax position for their clients. So they're not worried about any of those types of things. They're just trying to purely run the money and the mandate of the fund. So
it's probably
what financial advising is you have to use that. And actually, let me back up. the professional fund manager or the money manager that does that and is running the funds, they're buying and selling these shares and deciding which company to go in and which company to stay out of, and they're meeting with they're meeting with CEOs, executives and CEOs from different companies and trying to work all of that. They have zero time to be meeting or they have zero time to be putting even a face or a name to the money.
Yes. And this was my point. It's not that they're falling down in this area. No, it's just that's not their job. That's not their job. Their job is to manage that money.
They have zero time to be putting a face or a name to the money, let alone meeting with clients and saying, what are your goals and objectives? What are your if we flip over now to the financial advisor side, the financial advisor, our belief is to be meeting with their clients, to be coming up with personalised strategies, to be taking in the low hanging fruit, such as all the tax planning that we spend hours about talking about on this podcast.
I think even
setting them up for for 0% tax, all those types of things
that I had with this person as well, which was sort of interesting, was that, and again, of that hour and a half, we spent 10 minutes talking about portfolio construction and probably half an hour talking about tax minimisation and the best vehicle to own your retirement savings. We spent the first 45 minutes just talking about enough and what did enough money mean to them. And that's, I guess, the difference is you're never going to go to a portfolio manager and say, here's a pool of money. Can you manage that? Yes, absolutely. I can invest that. I can grow it. And that's what their whole mandate is. It was a very different dynamic, because this conversation was, I've got this money. What should I do with it? And the conversation was, well, what's the money for? What's the point of it? What's the plan? What's the purpose of it? What's the goals that you're trying to achieve with this money? Before we back into even the tax planning side, before we go, okay, well, how should it be structured? We need to start with, what do you need it for? What's of these different buckets of money? Which ones do you need in 6 months' time? Which ones are going to make you feel good about, you can sleep at night knowing that you've got all your emergency covered? Which ones are going to make you, which ones need to allow for you to draw an income in 20, 25 years' time? All those sorts of things. It was a different dynamic, I think, for the client to start with that perspective of, well, if you're saying you want A, B, and C, either you have enough money, or how much money do you need to make that happen? And then what do we need to do to actually go and put that in place? Whereas,
well, I think the great Nick Murray sums it up beautifully. Goals, then financial plan, then
portfolio,
and only then portfolio.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that is it has to be in that order.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this in. You can see this on both sides of. See, everyone has, to some degree, it's not an exact science, but everyone has a rough amount of money that they will need to get to at retirement, a retirement target they'll need to live the life they want throughout retirement. And what you find is that if you have a portfolio manager rather than a financial advisor, you are there's too likely. There's only really two outcomes. You can either go too far, and that's, I think, this client that I was talking to, that's what they were at risk of doing, is they were kind of going, well, I need to work for another however long and I need to save another X amount. They were, without any input from a financial advisor who was really thinking about that retirement, they are at risk of spending the next 10 years building up a capital base that they don't really need to fund a retirement that they could fund with half of that amount. The other side of it that I've seen before, and you would have seen the same, is, I've had conversations with people before, mainly in pubs and places like that, where people have gone, I've got a financial advisor. He sends me a statement every year. As long as the number's higher than the year before, I'm happy with that. And so the risk is either you end up with too much money, which is probably a better problem to have, or you get to retirement and your financial advisor / portfolio manager has managed the money and has grown that every year and has it's the numbers gone up and up and up, but you get to retirement and you end up with half of the money you needed. Now, it doesn't really, and this is, I guess, the point we've touched on in the past, it doesn't matter to some degree if they've done a good job of managing that money that you've given them, if you only end up with half the money you need, where really the conversation that they should have had with you was 10 years ago going, hey, I can manage this money, but that's not going to be enough to get you where you need to be. based on what you want in retirement, you need to be putting more money in, or you need to be adding more to this, or you need to plan for, we need to let this money compound out for longer so that it can grow to the point you do that you need for your retirement target. Those are, I think, the two risks that you run is if you're listening to this and you go, yeah, I've got a financial advisor, and he takes care of my super, I've got an investment set up with someone. That's fine if you're doing the planning and you know where you need to get to, and you're just handing that money over to someone to say, here, manage that for me, and you're happy with that dynamic, then that's fine. Where I've seen this sort of go wrong is that people go, I've got a financial advisor, he must be doing everything that I need to do there. If I needed to be adding more money in, he'd let me know, or if I could cut back on work earlier and I really wanted to, he'd be letting me know that. If you think you've got a financial advisor and they think that they are a portfolio manager, that's where the breakdown in communication can happen.
Yeah. If you want a second opinion, certainly we would welcome you to contact us at podcast@mo50.com.au. We'd be more than happy to set up a Zoom meeting at no cost or obligation with you. And in that meeting, like you did for Darren, Dallas, you'd be going over the high level, the high level stuff, and basically having a look at what their goals and objectives are, what type of plan you may be able to come up with to meet those goals, and then finally, overlaying a portfolio of that.
That's exactly right. So, I think it's a great point. If you're looking for a second opinion, feel free to give us a yell. Even if you are happy with, or you think. I guess the point that I'd also say is if you think that you have a financial advisor and you're thinking now, maybe I haven't had some of these conversations, I'd obviously recommend give us a yell and we can have a look over that for you. Also, just raise these questions with your financial advisor. If you raise these questions of, hey, how much do I actually need in retirement, and your financial advisor sort of looks at you and blinks and goes, oh, well, I don't know. I read an article the other day saying that the average couple needs $1 million to be comfortable in retirement. Or if you raise a question of, hey, is this the most tax effective way that we could be structured everything? It may be the case that you have a financial advisor and that they have all these strategies in place, and that you maybe just haven't, maybe have forgotten some of the conversations that you've had or something like that, and you raising this might get those conversations happening and working for you. But I guess that would be the warning sign, is if you haven't had these conversations before, that's probably a warning sign that it's not that your financial advisor is thinking about all this on your behalf. They don't see that as their job. So I definitely recommend getting a second opinion, or at the very least raise these questions with your current advisor. And if you're not getting satisfactory answers, and if you're not really comfortable that they are across absolutely every part of your financial life, then I think that's the first thing I'd say there is it's not necessarily their fault. You might actually not have a financial advisor. Even though they've got financial advisor in their business card, you might actually have a portfolio manager.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.